I was running late as usual, trying to juggle the morning chaos before work. The coffee was brewing, the kids were half dressed, and I was halfway through sorting out the mess of old gym clothes I'd thrown into the bottom of my duffel bag. I didn't expect to find anything significant, but there it was, a folded-up dress shirt tucked in the corner. The fabric was crumpled, but something caught my eye. A bright red stain on the collar. Not just any red, this was too red, like the kind of lipstick you only see on TV. Teresa had never worn anything that bold. I stared at it for a few seconds, feeling a sickening tightness in my chest. I tried to brush it off. It had to be some kind of accident, right? Maybe she had kissed someone on the cheek or spilled something. Maybe she'd borrowed the shirt and... No, I couldn't lie to myself. The more I stared at it, the more questions I had. Was it a sign of something I didn't want to see? I shoved the shirt back in the bag and forced myself to focus on the day ahead. Work, the kids, the usual routine. But the feeling wouldn't shake. It lingered like a shadow, and no matter how hard I tried, it stayed with me, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. By the time I got home that evening, I'd told myself it was nothing, just paranoia. But when Teresa walked in, smiling like she hadn't just cracked my world wide open, I couldn't help myself. I had to ask, "Have you been seeing someone else?" She laughed like it was some sort of joke. "What? That's ridiculous." But I couldn't let it go. I slid my phone across the table and showed her the pictures, the texts, the proof. Her face drained of color as she stared at the screen. She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she said it was over between us, that she had fallen out of love with me, and Jeff, well, he made her feel alive again. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, but I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Everything I'd built, everything I thought was real, crumbled in a heartbeat. I stood there, completely still, while she finished talking. "I want a divorce, Greg. It's over." The words hit me harder than any punch ever could, but instead of falling apart, something inside me shifted. A cold calm settled in. I nodded, walked out of the room, and took a breath. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. I had a feeling, deep down, that the worst was still to come. I didn't wait for her to come to me. As soon as I heard the door open, I was already standing in the living room. My heart was still hammering, but I kept my voice steady. I didn't care if I sounded calm or if she thought I was weak. I had to know. "How long have you and Jeff been together?" She stopped in her tracks, eyes widening, like I'd just asked her to solve a riddle. Her lips twisted in that fake smile I used to love. "What? That's ridiculous. Jeff and I are just friends." I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I slid my phone across the table, the screen lighting up with all the texts, the photos, proof of everything she had lied about. Her face went white, like she didn't know how to breathe anymore. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. For a long, unbearable moment, she stood frozen, staring at the phone, not even blinking. Her hands shook slightly, but she didn't touch it. Then, without looking up, she spoke. "It's been months, Greg. I've fallen out of love with you. Jeff makes me feel alive again." I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I felt something cold and hollow crawl through my chest, pushing out the anger I thought I would feel. The truth hit me harder than anything. Months. All this time, I'd been walking through a life built on lies. The family I thought we had, the years spent together, they were nothing more than a game for her. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words wouldn't come. What was there to say? That she had shattered everything? That she'd ruined me? No. I didn't need to say anything at all. She was still staring at the phone, and her voice came out quieter this time, almost like she was saying it to herself. "I want a divorce, Greg. It's over." I'd been prepared for the words, but that didn't make it hurt any less. In some way, I'd expected it, but hearing her say it, so casually, like she was talking about a grocery list, it made the reality of it all hit harder than I'd imagined. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't do any of the things I'd seen in movies or heard about from other people. I just nodded once, slowly, like I was accepting a heavy, bitter truth. I didn't need to stay in that room anymore. I didn't need to listen to any more of her excuses or half-truths. I turned, walked out, and didn't look back. I had no idea what came next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this go without a fight. The next few days felt like a blur. The anger from the confrontation had faded, replaced with a quiet, burning need to understand everything. I started going through the piles of bank statements Teresa had always handled. She'd never been secretive about money, but she also never gave me a reason to look too closely. Until now. I pored over the documents, each number sinking into my gut like a weight. Then I found it. There were regular withdrawals, big ones, over the last year. More than $50,000, all going to a company under Teresa's name. At first, I thought it was some sort of mistake, maybe an investment, maybe a payment she forgot to mention. But the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't just some casual spending. I dug deeper, researching this company. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The company had no real physical address, no solid web presence. It was a shell, just a name. The kind of place you'd bury shady dealings if you were trying to hide them. My stomach dropped. I wasn't just dealing with an affair. Teresa had been hiding something much bigger. I reached out to a financial advisor, someone who could make sense of the mess I was looking at. He confirmed my worst fears. Those withdrawals, they were linked to offshore accounts and untraceable investments. There was no paper trail, nothing that would make sense unless you were trying to cover up something huge. The truth started to sink in. The affair was bad enough, but this was a betrayal on another level. I wasn't just losing Teresa, I was losing everything. I couldn't afford to wait. I immediately contacted a divorce lawyer, a tough one who specialized in high-stakes cases. I needed someone who understood the stakes, someone who could help me figure out how to protect myself. I couldn't let her walk away with everything, not after what I'd uncovered. While I waited for the lawyer to get back to me, I kept digging. I spent hours researching this mysterious company, trying to track down anything that could give me more answers. The deeper I went, the darker it got. The company was connected to more than just Teresa. It had ties to fraudulent business practices, sketchy investments, and questionable people. The kind of people you didn't want to be caught up with. I felt sick. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was a financial nightmare, and I had no idea how deep the hole went. All I knew was that I had to be ready. Whatever was coming next, I couldn't face it unprepared. The more I learned, the more I realized Teresa hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been building a secret life, one that could destroy me. I couldn't let that happen. I had to fight back. Rachel, my lawyer, kept telling me to stay calm, but that was getting harder and harder. She said I needed to document everything, texts, emails, bank records, whatever I could find. It was like she was trying to keep me from jumping off the edge, but I was already falling. Still, I did what she asked. I kept digging, pulling up every email, every transaction, every scrap of evidence I could get my hands on. The more I uncovered, the worse it got. But even that wasn't enough, so I hired a private investigator, someone who could dig deeper into Teresa's life than I ever could. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. When the investigator called me a few days later, I was expecting more information about the company or the financial stuff. But what he told me wasn't just about money. "Greg," he said, his voice tight, "this is bigger than I thought. Jeff's been involved with Teresa for years, and it's not just about the affair. This goes much deeper." I felt like the floor had dropped out beneath me. "What do you mean deeper?" "Jeff's been helping her hide money, funneling it through shell companies offshores. He's been part of this whole operation. It's not just about cheating on you. They've been planning something much bigger." I felt my blood run cold. For years I'd trusted Jeff, had him over for dinners, called him my best friend, and now I found out he was part of a scheme to rob me blind, to help Teresa steal from me, from my kids. I couldn't breathe for a second. "What the hell are you telling me?" I muttered. "The affair, the money, it's all connected. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. They've been working together to destroy you, Greg. They've been setting you up for a long time." I stood there in shock, my head spinning. My best friend, Teresa, they weren't just tearing apart my family. They were plotting to take everything from me. I hung up, and my hands were shaking. I knew then that I couldn't wait any longer. Rachel was right. I had to get ahead of this. I had to file for divorce, and I needed to get full custody of the kids. I couldn't let them drag my kids into this mess, not after everything they had already done. But there was still one thing I had to do. I had to confront Jeff. I had to hear it from him, straight from the source, even if it destroyed me in the process. I called him, set up a meeting, and I could feel my chest tightening just thinking about it. I wasn't going to back down, not this time. This wasn't just about a betrayal anymore. It was war, and Jeff, along with Teresa, had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The park was empty, quiet, just the sound of distant traffic in the background. I had told Jeff to meet me here, away from everything, where no one could hear. I didn't want anyone around when I said what I had to say. I saw him coming, walking slowly, his hands shoved in his pockets. He looked nervous, but there was something else there too. Guilt. I'd known Jeff for years, and I could read him like a book. His face tightened when he saw me, and for a second, he almost turned around. I wasn't going to give him that. "Sit down," I said, my voice flat. He hesitated but finally did, looking at me like he wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't waste any time. "How long have you been using my life for your own gain, Jeff?" His eyes flickered for a second before he opened his mouth. "Greg, I cut him off. "Don't bother with your excuses. I've got everything. Texts, bank statements, photos." I slapped my phone down on the bench between us, showing him the evidence. His face drained of color. His lips parted, but nothing came out. He just stared at the screen like he couldn't believe what he was seeing, like he'd somehow forgotten I could figure it all out. "Look at it, Jeff," I said, my voice shaking now. Not with anger, but with something deeper, something I couldn't name. "You took everything from me, my family, my trust, and now you're trying to destroy me financially." He swallowed hard, his eyes darting around, clearly trying to figure out how to talk his way out of this. I didn't mean for it to go this far," he stammered, running his hands through his hair. "I didn't think it would. Look, Teresa and I, we just thought you were too weak to defend yourself. We used that. We figured you'd never see it coming." I felt my stomach tighten. Weak? Was that what he thought of me all these years? That I was weak? I stood up, pacing a few steps away. My hands were trembling, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't. Not now. Not when everything I'd trusted had been ripped away like this. "Don't you dare call me weak," I snapped. "You think you can tear everything down and walk away? You think you got it all figured out?" He looked up at me, a mix of shame and defiance in his eyes. "Greg, we're sorry. We didn't want—" I stopped him cold. "I'm done with the apologies, Jeff. I'm done with both of you. This ends tonight." My voice was steady, but the weight of it hit me as I spoke. "I'm not letting you destroy me. I'm not letting you destroy my family or my future. You'll never get away with this." I could see the realization in his eyes, the truth that I wasn't going to roll over, that I wasn't the same guy who'd trusted him for so long. I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. "I've got nothing left to say to you," I said, my words sharp now. I turned and walked away, my heart heavy, but my steps steady. I could feel Jeff watching me, but I didn't look back. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But as I walked away from him, something inside me shifted. I wasn't lost anymore. I was going to take control back, no matter what it took. I didn't want to drag this out any longer. Every moment I spent waiting felt like another layer of the lie piling up. I had to act, and I had to do it in a way that couldn't be ignored. I began compiling everything, the texts, the photos, the financial records. I had everything I needed to expose Teresa and Jeff for what they were. But that wasn't enough. I knew if I was going to hit them where it hurt, I needed more. People who could confirm what I'd already uncovered, and leverage to make sure the world saw it. I started reaching out to some of their business associates, the people who'd been involved in the shady dealings. I didn't care if they were scared or reluctant to talk. I made it clear I wasn't letting this go, and neither were they. Some were hesitant, but after a few calls and a little pressure, they gave me enough pieces to fit together the full picture. But it was Jeff's boss, the head of the company he worked for, who held the real power. I didn't hesitate. I contacted him, set up a meeting, and laid it all out. The fraudulent transactions, the shell companies, the money laundering, they were all connected to Jeff and Teresa. By the time the meeting was over, he had no choice but to take it to the board, and that's when things really started moving. The next step was even bolder. I reached out to the local news, making sure they had all the information, the affair, the financial scheme, the fraud. It was all tied together. Teresa thought she was safe, behind her perfect little life. She didn't realize I had already made sure the truth would come out. The board meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. Teresa had no idea what was coming. When she showed up, she walked into the room with her usual smile, expecting a normal day of work. She never saw the storm coming. As the details of the fraud were laid out for the board members, the room went quiet. The media was already there, cameras rolling. Teresa tried to defend herself at first, but it was too late. The damage was done. She could barely look anyone in the eye as the truth started to pour out. I was sitting in the back, watching everything unfold. My heart was pounding, but I kept my expression neutral. No more hiding, no more pretending I didn't know what had happened. This was the only way to make sure she couldn't bury the truth like she had buried everything else. When the story hit the news later that night, it spread like wildfire. Her carefully constructed life, her perfect little world, was crumbling in front of her eyes. Jeff's career was in freefall too, and the company he worked for was under investigation. All the lies, all the deceit, laid bare for everyone to see. I didn't feel satisfaction, not yet anyway. This was just the beginning, and I knew the battle was far from over. The legal fight, the custody battle, it would drag on for months. But for that moment, watching Teresa's world shatter, I knew I had done the right thing. I was done being the victim. I was done being the fool. This fight wasn't over, but today, for once, I had won. Months later, I stood in front of the judge, a thick settlement agreement in my hands. It felt surreal, like I wasn't the same person who had walked into that courthouse months ago, desperate and broken. This time, I had control. This time, I wasn't afraid. The settlement secured everything I needed for my kids' future, their education, their well-being. It wasn't just money. It was the peace of mind that they would be taken care of, no matter what. Teresa, on the other hand, had been forced to pay a heavy price for everything she'd done. She'd lost so much, but it didn't feel like enough. Not after everything I'd lost. As for Jeff, he wasn't getting off easy either. The criminal charges had come, and they weren't pretty. His role in the financial scheme had caught up with him, and he had lost everything: his job, his reputation, his freedom. He was now a cautionary tale, a man whose life had imploded because of greed and betrayal. I wasn't happy about what happened to Jeff, but I didn't feel sorry for him either. He had chosen his path, and now he had to live with it. The final blow was that I had full custody of the kids. I had fought for that, and I wasn't going to lose them. No one was going to tear them from me. As much as I hated what had happened to our family, they were mine to protect now. The pain from the divorce was still there. It wasn't something that could just disappear. But there was something else too, a pride I hadn't expected. Pride in the fact that I had stood up, fought back, and won. Not just for myself, but for my kids. I had taken control of my life again. As the judge wrapped up the final details, I felt a sense of finality settle in. This chapter was over. The war was won. But the battle had changed me in ways I couldn't even begin to describe. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't consumed by rage. I was resolute. I had learned the hardest lesson of my life. Never let anyone else define your life. I'd let Teresa and Jeff do that for too long. Not anymore. Walking out of that courthouse, I took a deep breath. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest for months, years even, felt lighter now. The air felt clearer, like I could finally breathe again. I wasn't sure where the road would take me from here, but for the first time in a long time, I knew it was my road. I glanced up at the sky, the sun starting to dip behind the clouds. The future felt open, and for the first time, I was excited about it. This wasn't the life I had imagined. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was mine. And that was enough. I was starting over, and this time, it was on my terms.